Welcome to Retirement GPS, navigated by Synergy, your roadmap to a secure and confident retirement. Each week, we explore strategies, stories, and planning frameworks designed to help you navigate the complexities of life after work. From tax planning to investments, income strategies to risk management, our goal is to give you the clarity and confidence you need to make informed decisions. But retirement isn't just about the numbers. It's also about lifestyle, purpose, and peace of mind. We're here to guide you through both the financial details and the personal dimensions of this next chapter. Let's chart today's course.
Welcome back to the Retirement GPS podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Zaharchek, certified financial planner and president of Synergy Retirement Planning.
And I'm your co-host, associate planner here at Synergy, Zane. So today we're going to answer another common question that we hear from a lot of pre-retirees and retirees. Should I consolidate my investment accounts? Hopefully the potential benefits of consolidating accounts is something that you'll learn today. When exactly it makes sense, when it might not make sense, and how consolidation can really improve things like tax coordination, risk alignment, and income efficiency.
And what I want to do is start by telling you a story. This story is actually an aggregation of a couple of different people, because we have this happen quite a bit with people coming in to work with Synergy, but I decided to consolidate them into one fictional couple. We're going to call them John and Jane. I know, very original. John and Jane brought in their statements, and they had 7 different accounts. They had 2 old 401ks, they had 3 IRAs, and a brokerage account. They also had a small pension rollover that they'd almost forgotten about. And they weren't doing necessarily anything wrong, but over a 35-year career, they had simply accumulated lots of different accounts as they changed jobs and custodians. But as retirement approached, the complexity started to really create a lot of stress, especially when it came to, hey, can we get the portfolio breakdown of this account? And they didn't even know how to log into that account. So they asked a simple question to us, which was, should we consolidate these so that we don't have money in so many different places? And what they didn't realize was that the issue wasn't necessarily performance or necessarily being able to log into those various accounts, but it was coordination. Because the problem was they had one account invested one way, they had another account invested a totally different way, and asset allocation was completely inconsistent across all of these accounts. And when we brought them all together, because in our planning, we don't really care about whether the money's held in your left pocket or your right pocket. I don't care if it's in a Schwab brokerage account or a Vanguard IRA. We look at everything together. We want to see your asset allocation across all accounts. And when we aggregate the accounts, we've realized that they were way too aggressive in their portfolio. And they didn't even realize it because they were like, I have this one account that is a cash account and this one account that's all bonds. But the problem is those were really small percentages relative to the entirety of their IRAs. And the worst part was when they did hit required minimum distribution age, they would have to aggregate and calculate the totality of all of these accounts to make sure that they're distributing properly. Now, fortunately, they were several years away from that, but it was going to be a problem down the line. So what we talked about was making sure that they took a look at everything, and then we brought it all together to consolidate it into a single IRA per person and one brokerage account, and then we opened a Roth IRA so that we could start Roth conversions. We basically took these 7 accounts and brought them down to 4, with one account being a brand new account that we were going to bring everything together. The great thing there is also we could make sure that the beneficiaries were properly coordinated, and we could coordinate it for their tax planning. So that's what consolidation provides. It's not necessarily reduce stress, although that's important for sure, but it's understanding the totality of the complexity of the investments that you have, and it's making sure that RMDs are properly satisfied and that you can manage everything in one place.
I don't know. I would say that it reduces stress. Having less accounts, really, the same money, don't get me wrong.
Yeah, you're not wrong. We've had extreme examples of people that come to us with 15 accounts and we bring them down to 3 or 4. It's amazing that somebody would just have so many accounts. Everybody has these different ideas on how they should be handling their money, and it's mental accounting. But people like to keep a different IRA for every 401k that they've ever rolled over. I'm not quite sure why, But I've actually heard that from people. I have 7 IRAs because I've had 7 jobs, and I rolled over the 401k to each different IRA. And I said, why don't we just consolidate that?
And they're all invested the same too, which I don't really understand. Why not just put it all in one account at that point?
Correct. So let's talk a little bit about why we would have multiple accounts over time. And what we've seen in the past is, again, as I described, changing employers. So if you've had 7 different jobs, you may have 401ks that you actually left with those jobs. The problem is a lot of times you can't even log in to see what the balance is. Getting those accounts moved and rolled over to IRAs actually can be really challenging because they're like, I worked there 20 years ago. I don't even know who I can contact. I don't know how to log in and see that account. That's a real problem. You're basically losing track. It's almost like unclaimed property that you've got to go look and track down. Changing employers can create this sort of string of accounts that are like breadcrumbs left behind you and trying to pick them up and figure out where they belong. Get those consolidated. Rolling over 401ks into separate IRAs, we talked about that, having a different IRA for each job that you worked at in the past. Opening brokerage accounts with different institutions. We've seen people say, this is my brokerage account with Fidelity. That's where I do my main investing. But I have a Robinhood account. I have an Acorns account. Robinhood, I buy my crypto. And in the Acorns account, I buy fractional shares every single week, $50 a week. And I'm like, this is bonkers. Like, this stuff is all over the place. Consolidating those accounts is important. If you inherit an account, this is an account that typically can't be consolidated, specifically if it's an IRA. We have to roll it into what's called an inherited IRA. It has to stay completely separate. So obviously that can create some complexity. But as long as it's at the same broker-dealer, you can see it. And then working with multiple advisors, either now or over time. And you have these accounts kind of spread all over with multiple advisors. Like individually, these decisions may make sense, but over time, they just create this unnecessary complexity and stress. As you said, Zane, it's one of those things when you go into retirement, I think the goal here is to reduce stress, and you're just creating more of it.
So we've talked about why exactly this happens, but let's start getting into why it should happen. What are the benefits to consolidation?
Yeah, first thing is right off the bat, as we mentioned, simplification. So fewer statements, easier performance tracking, centralized beneficiary designation, right? Not have to go to multiple accounts if you want to change a beneficiary. Reducing administrative burden, just like the paperwork, right? At tax time, all these 1099s that you might be getting, just simplify that, chunk that down. It often reduces the stress, but it also improves the oversight over time. Next is better risk alignment, and we talked about that in our story. Multiple accounts that can just unintentionally distort the asset allocation because this one account, this is my Apple account. I have all my Apple stock in this account, so that doesn't really count towards my asset allocation, but it does. And when we put it into our financial planning system and we see you wind up having 30% of your total net worth in Apple, way too much risk. So these are the things that can be really helpful by consolidating, but it allows us to coordinate the allocation, clearly understand the risk exposure that we're dealing with, and then properly diversified across the full portfolio. Next is improved tax coordination. And when accounts are scattered, Roth conversions become harder to manage because now if we're doing a conversion, it's a brand new Roth. We've never had a Roth before. Now we have an additional account, and it's understanding which account is where and how our Roth's being done. Capital gains harvesting is less efficient because clearly you don't understand all the different gains and losses you have across accounts. If you have one brokerage account that has all your taxable money in it, then you can see very clearly, where do I do tax loss harvesting? We talked about that on a prior podcast, but it's an important tax strategy to save you some money. RMD planning becomes fragmented, and this can easily be a place where you drop the ball and really are heavily penalized for it. So not taking proper RMDs because you have accounts all over the place is important to understand that at the very most you should have no more than 3 IRAs. It would be a Roth IRA, a traditional IRA, and an inherited IRA. If you have multiple inherited IRAs, that's fine. That's just something you may have to have, but there's no reason you should have any more than those 3 accounts. Most people we work with have 2. They have a traditional IRA and a Roth IRA. All of their retirement monies are in one of those 2 accounts. Consolidation can really improve the withdrawal sequencing, so understanding what you can take and the order of returns and taking it properly, tax bracket management, and asset location decisions. So just understanding where things are so that we can make effective decisions on them. And then lastly is income efficiency. So to coordinate an income plan, it also requires understanding like which different accounts can we draw from to pull and make good decisions about tax brackets and thresholds. Again, we talked about this in a prior podcast on income distribution, But having accounts all over the place makes it really tricky. Managing IRA withdrawals carefully, monitoring RMD obligations, and balancing Roth and pre-tax distributions. So these income efficiencies are hard to do when you have multiple accounts.
Right. So now I'm thinking, especially with consolidation, it does really seem a benefit, but I'm going to pick your brain a little bit and ask, when exactly would it not be ideal? Do you think that there's any decision makings in that?
Sure, there's always exceptions to every rule. It's why in financial planning, we don't like to use rules of thumb in general. Consolidation may not always be the right move for you depending on the situation, but situations where caution should be applied, or at least consideration should be taken into account. Number one, if you have an old 401k or you have your current 401k that you want to try to consolidate because it can do in-service distributions, but you have an active loan that you have to manage, rolling that over would mean that loan would be due effectively immediately. So you want to be careful of that. If you have company stock, may require that you have certain account that it has to be in, and you may not have a choice. That just may be an account that you have to have outside of where you have most of your accounts. If you want access to low-cost institutional shares, to be honest with you, I don't really care that much about that. We're building portfolios now that have such low costs. I don't really know what a lot of our funds have 3 and 4 basis points as their fees. Even institutional shares, they're not going to be much cheaper than that. But if you do want to access a certain type of investment for its costs or for its diversification purposes that you can't get elsewhere, that may be a reason to have it. And if you have an employer plan, clearly with a current employer that you just don't have the option to roll it over. So having a held away account is a part of life. If we're working with somebody who is still working, not yet retired, and they have a job with a 401k, we just know we're not going to manage that account. We'll help them with that, but we don't manage it.
Now, really, if you're listening to this and wondering, what exactly should I do next? There's definitely some key questions to ask yourself. Things like, are fees lower in the current plan or in a rollover IRA? Does the employer plan offer benefits that an IRA doesn't? Does my employer offer sufficient investment options? Does simplification outweigh plan-specific advantages? I think these are all really important topics to consider. And so a little bit of a checklist on what to do next is really creating a complete list of all investment accounts, being sure to review fees, investment options, and features, definitely confirm beneficiary designations, access tax planning coordination across accounts, and definitely, and this is probably the most important one, but speak with your advisor before initiating these rollovers to determine whether this is the right decision for you. We're going to move into our listener questions. So we want to thank you once again for submitting in some questions for me to ask Ryan. The first question is, are there tax consequences when consolidating accounts?
The short answer is no, there should not be tax consequences. If you are rolling 401k into an IRA and you're doing it properly, which means a direct rollover, so you're moving it from custodian to custodian. If you take delivery of the money and you don't put it into the IRA within 60 days, it will be taxable. So just make sure you're doing it properly. When we roll over an IRA to an IRA, a 401k to our IRAs, there are no tax consequences. We always set up a direct custodian to custodian transfer. So you really should have no tax consequences. Apple that you bought in 1997 because Steve Jobs came back and you love Steve Jobs. God bless you. What a great purchase that was. You get some big capital gains there. Don't sell those shares and then move it to another brokerage account. You can move those shares in kind. You can open, if you don't like Fidelity, you want to work with Schwab, you can take those 1,000 Apple shares and transfer them in kind. Don't trigger any taxes, and you're no different from Fidelity than Schwab. You have 1,000 shares of Apple with no taxes. So you really, if done right, you should have no tax consequence.
And this is a good question, but what happens to my beneficiary designations when I move accounts? So if someone had their wife as a beneficiary and then they decided to roll over the account, would the beneficiaries change?
Yeah, that's a great question. They wouldn't necessarily change, but you're setting up a new account, so you have to set up your beneficiaries appropriately. Let's just say you are retiring from your old job in your 401k that had your wife as a beneficiary, and you're now rolling it into an IRA that is going to be managed at Charles Schwab. When opening that IRA, make sure that you set up the beneficiaries the way you want them. The beneficiaries don't roll over, even though the assets do. So you need to make sure that Charles Schwab account has a beneficiary set up. We don't let people open accounts without beneficiaries, especially retirement accounts where beneficiaries are an option. We typically even like payable on death or transfer on death feature on a brokerage account. So it transfers automatically and avoids probate. But yeah, no, that's not automatic. Just because you're rolling over your cash, your investments, doesn't mean that you're rolling over your beneficiaries. Make sure beneficiaries are proper on the new account.
Great. So that's definitely something to keep in mind when you're moving accounts over. The last question that I have is, should spouses combine accounts into one joint retirement account? What do you think about that?
Oh, it's a great one. That actually does come up, even though a lot of you in GPS retirement land listening to this know the answer. But the answer is no, you can't do that. It's nice to say, it does come up. People say that. Why can't we just consolidate our husband and wife's IRAs? IRAs, by definition, stands for individual retirement account. You are not allowed to have a joint owner on an IRA. It is only for an individual, which means it always has to be in one person and one person only in their name. There's no ability to do that. The way you avoid any estate issues is by adding the beneficiary. But no, you can't have joint IRA.
There's no JRA, joint retirement account?
Joint tenant right of IRA survivorship.
Yeah, pretty much.
No, unfortunately, no such thing. Now, I should actually add a caveat to that. You do have that on a brokerage account. You can't have a joint brokerage account. So if it's a taxable brokerage account, of course, that can be held jointly. Just like your checking account, just like your savings account, IRAs cannot.
All right, great. Something to keep in mind here is your investment structure should support your strategy, not complicate it. So if multiple accounts are creating confusion or limiting coordination, maybe consolidation might improve clarity, reduce things like stress, and obviously strengthen your overall plan. Honestly, sometimes the biggest improvement is not just performance, it's really organization. And in this case, it's a really big deal.
Yeah, Zane, this is actually a really important topic, and it's not really something that we thought about initially when we designed this podcast, but this question has come up, and I thought it would be a great idea. Kudos to you for coming up, for finding this question and bringing it to me, because consolidating accounts is just one of these simple things we can do to reduce stress in our life, reduce stress in our financial life, and just avoid mistakes. It's just like a simple way to avoid mistakes. Great question, great topic. I hope you guys got something out of this, and we look forward to seeing you next week. We got some more big stuff on the horizon.
Yes, we do, and keep learning and keep planning.
Thank you for listening to Retirement GPS, navigated by Zenergy. To explore today's topic further, visit our blog mile markers at zenergyretirement.com/blog, where we offer detailed strategies, examples, and downloadable tools to support your retirement journey. Follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook at Zenergy Retirement Planning for weekly insights, checklists, and planning reminders. If you found this episode helpful, please subscribe, leave a 5-star review, and share it with someone planning for their future. Until next time, keep navigating toward a confident retirement. This podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended as investment, legal, or tax advice. Listeners should consult their own financial, tax, and legal advisors before making any decisions. Zenergy Retirement Planning is a registered investment advisor located in Red Bank, New Jersey.